might have a bit of a helicopter. I don't know. We'll see. If I stop talking, that means he came in. But anyway, we're just doing a follow-up on one we were at last week. So this is a TAM 7. It's got the gray doors on it. So I think maybe these came off of an American Standard unit, and they put the train name tag on it. Got zoning, kind of a hack job. We did not do any of this. This unit's a 2012. I think the compressor or the condenser coil was leaking. Something happened in the outdoor unit last year, so he wanted to keep the air handler and just replace the outdoor unit instead of doing it all. But he's got some other people kind of hacked up a zoning system between a split level or something, and anyway, there's vents that when one zone is closed and the other zone's running, there's still one or two vents connected into the opposite that blow air both ways. All the wood floors are enclosed, and getting in there and figuring all that out. But he chose to leave that the way it is. But the outdoor unit was on a hard lockout or something Friday. We came out and ran everything and said it was working okay. He wanted a supervisor out for a second opinion, so now I'm here to check it. So the unit ran through the weekend, and it was in the upper 80s all weekend. And I've got the zoning here, which I've got both thermostats calling. I have Y disconnected from each zone thermostat, so that the zone board will, I got G connected, so we still have the fan. It's still blowing, but I wanted to open both of these. So anyway, I changed the battery in this thing. I don't know where it cut me off at, but kind of how I test zoning is I have both thermostats in a call if I want to check my dampers, and I just disconnect Y from the board. Obviously it's going to default open both the dampers to the default position, and then I'll just put them in one at a time. For zone 1, I'm just going to cycle my outdoor unit on, and it's going to start to close the zone 2 damper, and we'll make sure damper for zone 1 is still open, which it is. And then now I'm going to connect zone 2. I just want to make sure I've got dampers that open and close. They're not sticking. I'm going to determine which one of these is my small zone. I'm going to hook up and check the static, and then I want to check my bypass. Make sure my bypass is opening properly when the small zone is calling by itself. I'll figure out which one of these is the small zone. I think it's going to be that one. A little bit of downstairs office space, couple of rooms. This one does most of the main floor right here. So I want to close that one and leave that one open and see what that bypass is doing. So now we'll disconnect that one real quick. So now this one over here should start closing. And it is. Stick it back in, and that one should start opening back up, and it is. And we'll do the same with this one. That one, this one should start to close, and it is. So now I'm going to hook this one back up. And this just keeps me from having to run back and forth to thermostats, turn them on and off. Just disconnect the calling thermostat, have all your thermostats calling, and then just disconnect the one at a time for the damper you're testing, hook it back up, open, close, one zone at a time, instead of having to run back and forth to the thermostats. So I'm gonna hook up real quick. We're gonna check the static pressure on this thing with both zones opening, because I don't know what the hard lockout, that outdoor unit gives you a hard lockout, but it really never tells you what caused it. And it could be a high pressure switch, could be a low pressure switch. I doubt it's high because it's a brand new, it's 2 years old outside. I doubt there's a problem with the fan motor not running, unless it's that outdoor unit that uses the occasional 24 volt ECM type fan motor. We have had those be a problem from time to time. But let's see what our total static is on it real quick. Alright, we'll check the static real quick. Now our flashing light in here, if you look at this green one right up there, the number of flashes is the number of CFMs times 100. So we're getting 14 flashes on that yellow or that green light right there. So we're getting 14 flashes, which is telling me this thing's set up for 1400 CFM. We got a 4-ton indoor unit here, so we more than likely have a 3.5 ton outside. We'll double check that when we get out there, but let's see what our return static is with both zones open. 0.2. Our supply is 0.1. 5, so we've got a 0.35 static. I'm going to close one of these zones, see what this bypass does over here. Disconnect zone 2. And our zone 2 damper is going to start to close. Let's see what our bypass does. It should start to open, and it opened a little bit. I'd like to see it open a little more than that. Obviously it's not supposed to open wide. Let's see when we get completely closed what happens. There. It didn't open all that much. Let's see what our static went up to on the supply. Now kind of a tricky spot because I really need to be checking that in between the zone dampers, not past one of the zone dampers, but there's nowhere back here that I can get to check it. That's the end of the zone box. You got a square zone damper over here, a rectangular one, and a round one back there, and I'd really like to get somewhere where I can see on my main plenum the total static on the supply side change when one's damper's open and one's closed. I need to be in between them, because if I check over here now, I'm not going to get much static because that zone's closed. So kind of is what it is. But we didn't install any of this, so I'm not going to start messing around with it. Let's see what that bypass does when the other zone. So they should have put a 2-stage system in with this zoning. That way when it's in, most of the time it's going to be running one zone. It'll be running in stage 1 anyway. It should be 70% of your airflow. So that would help a lot with zoning. But anyway, it is what it is. So now let's see what this thing does. It's like it cracked open just a little bit more. Wait for that thing to get completely closed. And now this is definitely going to be our smallest zone, and it's opened up a little bit more. I would really like to see it back over here. It bypass zoning, man, it just is a pain in the butt. So I'm going to crack that a little bit more. A little bit more pressure relief on that thing. I'm just dumping it right back into the system. Zoning is crap on a system. I mean, it's cheaper than paying for 2 full systems, but I mean, it's the longevity of your equipment's going to be worthless. So now let me go over here, put this zone back in. See, I went out on the cool limit. See it flashing? So there's our DAT sensor right there. So that little bit of time with that one zone calling, we went on our DAT limit. And it is about 66 degrees or 67 degrees on this floor, or this area where this zone is cooling. So it'll shut the outdoor unit off, let the air blow. As soon as the temperature stabilizes back out, it'll reset, turn the outdoor unit back on. I wonder if that's part of it, if it's on a lockout coming on and shutting off, if it has some kind of effect on the pressures in some way. We'll still go out there and hook up to it, but I mean, our bypass is responding. I think it needed to be a little more open than right here. I think it needed to come here a little bit more, but I wanted to run it with the other zone, or with both zones, make sure it stays in the closed position. But I mean, I don't believe it's a damper problem. These dampers have opened and closed every time I've disconnected and reconnected. But this is just I mean, the filter's clean. I checked that. I mean, it worked all weekend. It just had a hard lockout Friday, and he just wanted it double checked. But like I said, that defrost board outside goes out on a hard lockout, and you know, it's a few things can cause it. Typically, it's going to be multiple pressure switch openings, or high or low in cooling mode. Most of the other faults are related to your defrost control operation. But anyway, I'm going to test these dampers a couple more times, and we'll go out there and see what the actual pressures are, superheat, subcooling, things like that. Alrighty, let's get hooked up, see what our pressures are. Got to give it time for the airflow to ramp up. Full speed. Both the zones open up, give them time, each thermostat, the time delay, all that. Really want to make a judgment on refrigerant charge until I know for a fact both zones are on. We are with that shit right there. We'll run this armor flex all the way up. That's that new crap. Trying to get a temperature clamp in here. Alrighty. Let's see what we've got. We're out in the damn boonies. We've got a big property out here, goes straight downhill to a creek bed and stream down there. Snakes out here, the boogeyman, everything else. So you gotta watch out for them to sneak up on you. See what our pressures look like. Refrigerant 410A. Make sure both of those zones are on. We're getting a 1 degree superheat and a 5 degree subcool. Right there. That ain't good. We'll go double check, make sure both those zones are calling. Got a 1.5 degree superheat and a 5 subcool still. Both zones are calling, and I think that bypass is a problem. I think it's dumping some cold air into the system still. Sensors and everything check out fine, and I've checked the sensors and ohmed out the stepper motor. All that is checking good. zoning. That's what it gives you when you're running at 68 degrees in the house and you're bypassing cold air back right under the coil, straight up through it. Low as hell superheat. I'm gonna go double check them, but you can put your ear up. I'm gonna check the temperature split on that bypass, then check my temperature split overall on my supply side, because that thing's dumping some cold air, I think. Look, that bypass is closed right there. And we're still dumping, temperature dropping, 52 degree air right in here, right into that side of the coil. I'm telling you guys, zoning sucks, especially if you got a bad bypass. I think that bypass, the seal in it has come loose, because you can stick your ear in the bypass down towards the return side, which they stuck it right to the side of the air handler. Instead of putting a big enough plenum on it to bring everything to a plenum, they ran the bypass right into the side of the air handler, dumping right into the blower. So it did this crap right here with this bypass, brought it right in to the side of the blower assembly, instead of doing what they did over here, bringing this plenum out and then bringing this thing straight down to the top of it. It's just cold air, and then you get the bypass, if it's bleeding, dumping that cold air in the return, going straight into this coil, and your superheat's nosediving. You stick your ear down there, you can still hear air flowing through that duct. So I think his problem is going to be his bypass piece of junk, still dumping cold air. It's not closing all the way, and that's why we're getting that 2 degree superheat. My subcooling's coming up a little bit. Let me see what it's supposed to be. The subcoolant on this thing is 8 degrees. I'm at 6.5. So I think this thing needs a new bypass, and that's what I am going to recommend. I'm going to check the temperature split real quick, see what's going on. But you can still hear air pulling through that duct down there next to the air handler on the closed side of the bypass. The bypass, I cranked it closed, and you can still hear air making that turn around that duct where it bends back into that air handler. So I'm gonna double check all that, but this is a zoning system. It's typical. It does crap like this. That's why zoning's worthless. Anyway guys, appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe.